It was a 700-acre campus, a modern kingdom of sorts. Show you how brutally the crime was committed. It pinches your soul in a lot of ways. So अगर जिंदा वापस आ गया तो ले लियो.
Hello, BO family. So this is the first episode of a new podcast series we are launching on this channel. The idea of this podcast is to get people from the public services like IAS, IPS officers, ministers, journalists, just people for us to really understand what goes on behind the scenes or things that we as the public don't really see come on the screen. In this episode, we have Akash, who is a former investigative journalist who started out his career with possibly the most controversial news personality in India, Mr. Arnab Goswami, when he was just starting out with Republic TV. He went on to work on cases such as the Ram Rahim riots, the Gurugram International murder case, uncovering resort politics in Karnataka, just to name a few. He went on to work with the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh during the pandemic. There are a lot of exclusive stories that he's revealed here which no one knows about. So let's just jump into it. So, see, your career seems like your professional career, has it even been 10 years since you started your professional career?
2017, so you're talking 6 years.
6 years, and the stories that you've told me feels like a lifetime of stories, right? So you finished your graduation and you started interning at Republic directly.
I wasn't interning, so this is a story in itself, if I can tell you that. So I've always envisioned myself playing for the country, a sporting career. Played for the state at multiple levels, multiple junior levels rather. And it was around 2013-ish, 14 that I was told that I will no longer be able to pursue a certain sport, primarily because of a broken backbone. I had met with an accident, ended up getting 8 screws drilled into my back.
Oh my God.
Post which I had to pivot. A lot of people did come up with suggestions on, you speak well, why don't you give journalism a try, etc. But it took a lot of time for me to understand what I want to do. Once your plan A is out of the window, I think it takes time for you to formulate another. I'm somebody who genuinely believes that having a plan B doesn't let you give your plan A 100%. So therefore, I never had one until life struck me. So one fine day, I was surfing through one of the social media platforms. This was in 2017. Around 3 to 4 years after being on bed for a year, I'd recovered fairly well over the next 3 years, etc. And I was looking at launching myself into a career. And the pop-up said, if you want to work with Mr. Arnab Goswami, who's coming up with his own network or own channel at that point in time, shoot us an email.
So this was before he started Republic officially.
Yes. This was before he had announced that he was coming up with a channel, but it was not on air. Right. So all the background work was happening. The team was being formulated. A lot of core team members were being recruited. It was during this time that I came across this pop-up on a social media platform, and I said, okay, I haven't tested my email drafting skills for quite some time, but I don't just shoot him an email. I didn't even have a CV. And the reason why I think during the course of this podcast, this story is going to be very, very important is because it's what I want to drive home personally through this session. If somebody like me who had never interned in a media house, had no clue of what all departments exist in a media house and what their respective job roles entail and what they deal with on a day-to-day basis, could shoot an email to somebody like Arnab Goswami. And I'll tell you what happened after that. So I just shot them an email titled Letter of Intent. And I just said, man, I've seen your work during your stint at Times Now. I really like what you do. And I'd love to join you. And I have nothing to show for it. I really don't have an internship record.
Was that mentioned in your email?
Yes. It was mentioned that I have nothing to show for it. I obviously didn't have a CV. I mean, if I had something to show, I'd have a CV, for God's sake. So I did not even expect a response, to be very honest. I was like, this is going to go into one of their trash cans. A week later or something, I get a call from the HR of Republic saying, you've got your interview lined up on this day at this time, so be ready. It's going to be a Skype call. I said, fair enough. I mean, being a fresher who's yet to give his final year examinations in 3 months, I thought, okay, an HR or maximum an editor is going to take my interview and judge as to whether or not I fit in. Half an hour before the interview, I get a call and they say, Arnab's just come in. And the term for Arnab at office is boss. So boss has just come in and we'll be plugging him in the next 15 minutes. And I'm like, wait, you're saying Arnab Goswami is going to take my interview?
A person who doesn't have any experience, who's getting into the field for the first time ever, is being interviewed by one of the top, journalists.
That was a shocker. I mean, I just had, 10 minutes to gather myself up. And the first question was a bouncer. He looked at me, he looked at my mail, didn't have a CV to look at. And he said, so Akash, what post am I looking at for you? I looked him straight in the eye through the camera and I said, I don't know. And he went, what? And he looked at the editor who lined up the interview and he's like, what is this? I mean, this guy doesn't even know what he's applying for. Though I had a justification for it, I said, so it'll be foolish of me to say I want to work in A department or B department without really knowing what they do. And as you can see, I've never worked in a media house before. I'm a tad bit clueless about what's coming my way. But I think I have the skill set to do what it takes to be good here. And after that, it went into normal generic interview questions. Luckily, because I had prepared for CLAT after my 12th, I kept in touch with current affairs to an extent. And like I said, because of that one question and the way it began, I had no hopes. I had zero hopes, to be honest. I went back home and I told my mother that I possibly need to look for another job. This one's not working out. A week after that, I get a call from the same HR saying, are you okay relocating to Mumbai? I'm like, wait, does that mean I've gotten the job? And she says, yes. And I eventually went to Mumbai, met Mr. Goswami. And it's very important, Rohit, that I highlight this here. I may not agree with 100% of the things that an X person or a Y person does. In this question, it's Mr. Goswami. But he's a person who's picked me up from college in 2017 and taught me everything that others would have taught you in maybe 5 years of your career within a span of 5 months.
I get that. He's giving you that opportunity to be where you are right now, right? 100%. He was a stepping stone for you. And at that point, of course, you didn't know what sort of a person he was. He is known to be now, right?
Exactly. And though I might agree, I might disagree, he has his own way of doing things. We parted ways after a brief period because I had other plans in life and I didn't agree with.
How long did you work with Republic?
I worked with Republic exactly for 5.5 months. And those 5.5 months were the most extensive training skeds that I've ever been in. Because for 5.5 months, working day in and day out without a single off for launching a national channel was something that taught me more than any other experience of mine could have.
So was the channel launched as you guys came in or was the channel launched a little later?
So I came in 3 months in, the channel's launched. So I was there for the first 2 months of the channel being launched, after the channel was launched.
Okay.
We did roll out a couple of really big stories. And that is exactly where, this is a very interesting story once again.
No, before you go to that, I want you to, because I know about this, I want you to tell the audience as well. Did you asked Mr. Goswami why he hired you?
I did. I went to Mumbai, I met him, and I was like, sir, why? Because after that interview, I really had no expectation, no hope that he would hire me. And he was very blunt. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, how many people in India do you think have the gall to sit right in front of me and say, I don't know, in an interview? And that was overwhelming to an extent, right? Because he was being real, he was being true, he was not trying to put on 100 things that eventually got me to. And coming from down south, coming from a university like Osmania University, Rohit, a lot of kids even today believe that the national media is beyond their reach. There are a lot of barriers. You need a godfather in the industry. Is something that I hear during the course of my guest lectures every now and then. If my journey proves anything, it proves the fact that if you've got it in you and if there's one man up there who can see that talent, see that spark and get you in.
It's just about taking that plunge. If you wouldn't have taken that plunge to send out that email, never happened.
It's about that. And how I became a reporter is another story that people should know. Because it portrays a certain trait in this man that maybe the world has ignored, right, to a great extent. They were rolling out the ISIS sting from Hyderabad. It was a very big investigation. It proved to an extent that ISIS operatives still exist in Hyderabad, etc. And there was a night meeting at around 2:30 a.m. And I remember
Is that the usual thing, like meetings at 2:30 a.m. and stuff?
Well, yes. I mean, it's a 24/7 news cycle. So he gets done. I mean, usually editors or anchors get done with their prime times at around 9:30, 10. So it does go deep into the night, but I think Mr. Goswami had his own style of working in a lot of ways.
Got it. And so was he like always there, or was he like a maniac in terms of the work that he did, or was he like chiller, like he would come in late in the evening?
Oh, that depended.
Okay.
That depended on a lot of things. See, he was a hard taskmaster for sure. And today, when I look back, there were times when I was with him that I might have gotten frustrated as a person, as a professional, because I was just entering a profession, didn't really know how it works. But today, when I look back, I think I'm thankful because that opened my doors up and that prepared me for a lot of things that I was going to face in the near future, and it made everything easier for me. He's a very hard taskmaster. He's chill when he is. He's a very humorous, good person to be around. He's somebody who's very down to earth at certain points in time. But yes, he loves his work, and he is a perfectionist when it comes to what he wants on air.
Right.
And yes, I mean, if you're not going to deliver, then your team's going to have a tough time. I mean, that's for sure.
Last question around him is that he has changed from what he was in Times Now to what he is in Republic today, right? And there are certain reasons for those changes. But when you were working with him, it was his initial days of Republic, right? It's the transition over years that's happened. What was like compared to what he was like at that point to now? Do you see the difference, or is it just for the camera? What is it about him?
Well, I see the difference. There have been phases that I've been observing in his journalistic style. When he started out with the Lalu sting, when he started out with the Shabuddin sting and all of that.
This is him in Times Now.
This is him in Republic when he started off. Again, this is just my personal opinion, what I've observed, because I've only been there for 5 months, right? They went all guns blazing, right? And then there was this time in Indian journalism that you can observe where things went mellow, where selectively stories were picked up, where the ruling dispensation could be attacked upon, etc. There was that trend. Post that, today if you look at it, I would say Republic's journalism style as an organization, in my opinion, has become way more objective than it was when it started out. But it is a huge shift from what he was in Times Now for sure. It is a different environment, right? Republic is his channel. At Times Now, he was an editor. So things do change. And as a person, has he changed? When I spoke to people who worked with him in Times Now, it was their opinion that he did because of multiple reasons again. Some in bad ways, some in good ways. But yes, there was a huge transition from what he was. I'll give you an example. This is an excerpt which people may not cozy up to. So, and that'll lead into how I became a reporter, right? So at 2:30 a.m. meeting, he said, I need 2 elements from Hyderabad and I'm rolling out a really, really big sting operation tomorrow. And how much I wish I could send somebody who could get me those elements. These were essentially reactions from the authorities and one ex-political leader, because he's been involved with this particular story for a long time. I don't know what happened to me at 3 a.m. I just stood up and I said, and this is what me, 3 months into active journalism. I've always known that I wanted to be on the field. I'm not a guy who can be curtailed to 4 walls or a cabin. The field is addictive for me. I stood up and I said, sir, I think I can get you these 2 elements. Why don't you make me a reporter? Why don't you just push me onto the field? He looked at everybody around, the top editors, his core team. I don't know what struck him. Within a matter of 45 seconds to 1 minute, this man looked at me and said, your flight's at 3:30, why don't you go pack up?
Wow.
He made me a reporter within 45 seconds to 1 minute.
Without experience.
Nothing. I've seen him make anchors in 30 minutes. Said, go roll a test bulletin in the studio right now. You're anchoring from 8 a.m.
Crazy.
So while people might disagree with a lot of things he does editorially, which is everybody's entitled to their own opinion, I also think that these are also sides to a human being that people should recognize.
Yeah. And he is where he is because of the amount of work and effort he's put in.
And we should only be fair when we look at a person. Another incident I was telling you about how the workplace was. So, Mr. Goswami has no concept of departments, or at least that was the case when I was there. So there's some people who are naturally always smiling, right? So this I very evidently remember. So he'd walked in and something wrong was going on air. A graphic had a spelling mistake or something of that sort, or one of the graphics were not fired. He comes in, there's this guy who's standing at the printer, waiting for a printout, and he looks at another production source. And Mr. Goswami is looking, he's like, why the hell are you smiling in my office when there's no graphic on the screen? How dare you smile in my office? So, that's the extent to which he could be a hard taskmaster. That's the extent to which it can get frustrating at times. But then, having worked with a lot of top executives, a lot of CEOs / CXOs / chief minister post that, I've come to understand the fact that it needs for a person to be so brutal in order to get to where they are more often than not.
Yeah.
And who am I to judge what?
And
what
that's
work?
common among a lot of like these top people, right? Okay, so that was your journey with Republic. Did you do any sting operations? Or what was your journalism side of Republic?
Journalism side, I was very instrumental in the ISIS coverage after the
Right.
sting was rolled out. After that, we were working. If you remember, there was this one MP from the state of Andhra Pradesh who had slapped an Indigo employee at an airport.
Oh, yes.
And then there was a sting that was done by Ms. Prema Sridevi, who was the SIT chief at that point in time. She went to his home place and stung him and revealed a lot of, I would say, if I may use that word, nasty things about him. So
About
I was,
the MP.
Yes. I was very instrumental in accumulating all the information that we needed to do to execute that string
Right.
in the planning. I was also instrumental in ensuring that, this MP had gone into hiding for a lot of time, primarily because he knew that he was going to face media backlash. And that's been the go-to strategy for most politicians after making a bizarre statement. So we had to track him down, figure out where he is, and then execute the sting operation the way it was executed. So I was doing all the background work and supporting Ms. Prema Sridevi there. Apart from that, as a journalist, I've covered the Abu Salem verdict, the 1993 bomb blast verdict from Mumbai.
When was that?
That was in 2017 itself.
Okay.
So I had covered that for Republic
Okay.
in Mumbai. I still remember that verdict being passed on to me slip by the reporter inside the courtroom. When
So you were sitting inside the courtroom.
yes.
And how does it work?
So whenever I'll give you an environment, right? I mean, it's nothing less than a fish market when there's a big case going on in the courtroom. The judge is sitting there. Everybody's waiting for him to pass the orders. Sometimes it happens in another manner. There are 50 to 100 journalists clogged in one particular courtroom. The lawyers on either sides. And then when suddenly he comes in and he declared the verdict and everybody was convicted, barring that one exception, I would say it was one of the biggest achievements at that point in time to be able to cover the verdict of the 1993 bomb blast, which includes the likes of Mustafa Dosta, which includes the likes of Abu Salem, and
Sanjay Dutt was also involved in it.
I think he faced his own share of things. He was also involved. That was pretty much my journey as a reporter with Republic, post which I made the transition to, I would say, CNN News18.
Okay.
And why is a big story again.
Okay.
So, I, per se, once I got a hang of the field, to be very honest, the field, like I said, is very addictive. I always knew that I was somebody who wanted to be out there and not limit myself and my prospects by sitting on the desk. Due respect to people who work out of the desk and are journalists, but that's just not my thing, to be very honest. So I had gone back and I asked, saying I want to be a full-time field resource. And I had also expressed a couple of things that I possibly did not agree with at that point. The discussion didn't go as I would have liked it to, and therefore I had to part ways with Republic TV. And it was during that juncture that I found a man who shaped me to be a specialist in executing sting operations.
Okay.
It was the managing editor of CNN News18, Mr. Radhakrishnan Nair. He not only extended an offer, he was the person who, for the first time, looked at me and said, I don't know why you can pull sting ops, but I just feel you can. Here's your first idea. Here's your first spy cam. Just go out there and do it and come back.
I guess there is a certain type of character you need for an investigative journalist, and I feel like even when I look at you, I feel like you are that guy.
Same thing. I asked him the same thing. So why did you hire me? This was a very interesting conversation, and in Hindi, Mr. Nair said, Akash, every broadcast media house or any media house needs 80% conventional journalists. People who do things by the book. People who, maybe are okay with that 9-hour shift. People who are okay, connecting with sources, taking information, putting a copy out. But it also needs 20% of those जिनके दिमाग में कीड़ा होता है. And somehow वो कीड़ा मैंने तेरे दिमाग में देखा. And that's exactly why you're here, and that's exactly why I'm pitching. So that was when I transitioned to become a complete on-field resource in the Delhi Bureau / the National Bureau of CNN News18 and News18 India. Worked with some of the best journalists in the industry like Pallavi Ghosh, Arnab, somebody who I personally respect, Mr. Radhakrishnan Nair, who unfortunately we lost while I was in an assignment in Kerala.
Okay.
And that brought me to, I would say, the Ram Rahim riots.
Okay, so let's give a background to who Ram Rahim is. What was the case like, right? Do you want to...
So Ram Rahim is the chief of the Dera Sacha Sauda, a system that has existed for decades.
What people will know him as the guy who produced those really two corny movies called MSG, Messenger of God, right? And he was a self-proclaimed God among the normal humans.
And you just need to say Love Charzer. It's as simple as that. Everybody remembers him after that.
Yeah.
He was the first rock star kind of Baba we had, right?
Yeah. With the tacky clothes and the goofy...
Yeah, man. I knew him as much too, right? So before this assignment was given to me, I just knew this much about him. I didn't know his backdrop. I didn't know his source of income. I hadn't read as much about the cases on him. So this was pertaining to a rape case. This particular verdict I'm talking about, post which the riots unfolded in Panchkula and Sirsa. That was his headquarters. So imagine this, I'm 2 weeks into active reporting. I'm just trying to understand how to hold a mic, what's a tic-tac, what's a SimSat, how do you do a walkthrough? Because these are things I had never done before. But somehow I got a hang of it and developed a passion on the job. So 2 weeks in, I get a call from my bureau chief. I don't mind naming him right now. He's a very fun guy called Subhajit Sen Gupta. And he called me to the office. He's like, Vapas aaja. And this was just a friendly banter, nothing serious. He's like, come back to the office. I need to talk to you. I went back to the office and he's sitting there. And he's like, these are your week offs for the next week. To agar zinda vapas aa gaya to le liyo. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, what? Where are you sending me? Indo-Pak border? Like, where am I going? He's like, do you know who Ram Rahim is? I'm like, yeah, but not to the extent that you're portraying him to be. I mean, it's not like Ram Rahim's going to come and kill me. Like, just go take that system, research as much as you need to. There's crucial verdict coming up, and you're going to be covering it from his headquarters in Sirsa. And I went and I read about it.
And Ram Rahim had a huge following, especially in Punjab and Haryana, right?
You enter his campus, Rohit. I don't know the state of it right now. I mean, because the army did a flag march. The army boots had entered the campus at some point after the riots. But it was a 700-acre campus, a modern kingdom of sorts. I enter this campus, and right from the hotel there, to the theater there, to the movie in the theater, to the hero in the theater, to the director of that movie, to a water bottle, to a car battery.
It was all him.
Everything was MSG brand. I mean, everything was produced by a brand called Messenger of God. I mean, in a sense. And I also met so many people, some of whom were educated, some of whom were not, who just came out and said, Marte dam tak Baba ji ke saath hai, no matter what. And then we sort of went into the whys of it, right? Why do you believe Baba so much? Because he's given us a place to stay. He gives us food every single day. So in a sense, I wouldn't call it his headquarters. I would say it was a kingdom. That he was ruling in a lot of ways. And in a sense, it so happened that if any power tussle, be it political or otherwise, had to be won in that region, you needed Baba's support. I mean, that was very evident. I don't think it was ever stated so bluntly, but it's time to say it. He became too powerful. I mean, he's gone to the extent of saying, I've trained Virat Kohli. So.
Wait, so based on my research as well, I don't know how true that is. You could probably correct me, but then apparently there was a tunnel that they found, which was a connection between where he stayed, or the darbar or whatever it was, to the girls' hostel or something. And then underground were like 2 to 3 rooms where the girls would sneak in, he would sneak in, and they would do. And apparently, based on the older beliefs, the main guy or the Baba, the position that he held, they were supposed to not be doing such things. They were not supposed to be in relationships, right? They were supposed to give up everything.
So yes, there was a gufa for sure. Once all of this happened, drones were sent in, cameras were sent in, we were allowed to shoot. There was an entire package, in fact, that I think Aaj Tak had done on the gufa. Because they had sent resources in. And it is a fact. Whatever you've heard, see, I may not be able to confirm everything to the extent of the minute details, because I don't think anybody can, unless and until it's either the victim or the culprit speaking about it, because like you said, it was a closed room. But there were 3 cases at that point in time. When Baba Ram Rahim got convicted for the rape in question, there were 2 other cases on him. One was that in the name of a ritual, he castrated 300 men. And one of the survivors had come out and filed a complaint against him. The second was the journalist who wrote about this, his murder,
Yes.
Mr. Prajapati.
Yeah.
I happen to have met his son after the verdict, and I just couldn't stop but feel the emotion there, right?
Was he convicted for the murder?
That's still due.
Alleged murder then.
Yes,
Alleged murder.
that's still due. There's a case running. So I would say there were a lot of things on that campus which were hinting at something really murky happening.
Basically a cult, like a typical cult behavior.
Yes,
thing.
I mean, in our terms, in the modern era, we can call it a cult. I mean, a lot of people might get hurt when we say that, but it is what it is, right? If you cannot, when does a cult become a cult? When you cannot see the wrongs in the belief system that is being driven down your head. When you support it no matter what, and when you go to the extent of saying Marte Jam Tak Baba Ji ke saath hai no matter what, that no matter what makes it a cult, and it makes it very different from a belief system.
Got it.
Because when you believe in something, you're rational, you have an issue-specific stance. I think every belief system has gone through its own set of evolutions where you found out that some things were wrong and not applicable anymore in this generation, and you've done away with them.
Got it.
But here, that wasn't happening, and you'll be shocked to hear that one of the masterminds behind the riots, because I was there and I spoke to him firsthand, and I know this, was somebody called Dr. Aditya Insa, who's an AIMS graduate.
Oh.
He was an ENT specialist who came out of AIMS. So these were highly educated people who were doing what they were doing.
Got it.
So
yeah, what was your experience like? What did you do in that case, during that case, and what was it like?
all right, so once all the threat-filled atmosphere was done away with, so we were finally in Sirsa. And at 12:30, approximately around 2:30 was when I guess we were expecting the verdict. Pardon me if I get the timing wrong, but 3 hours before the verdict, we had all gotten calls from our local reporters or local stringers or local resources saying, you know what, freshly carved out axes, petrol bombs, lathis are being readied, right? If you want to live, get the hell out of the campus right now. And that is exactly the message that every single on-field resource communicated to their reporter who came down from Delhi.
Wow, okay.
And we knew this was credible. These guys, we trusted them. There are resources. And all of us got calls from our reporter, from our respective offices when this was communicated to them saying, leave. You no longer have to be there. If you want to leave. It's your call. I know why. I still remember his name was Mr. Samir, one of our assignment editors. He called me and he said, Akash, nikal ja. I mean, don't take that risk. I know that, you have that fire of wanting to be there and all of that, but just get out. I said, sir, I haven't come from Delhi to Sirsa to run away 3 hours before the verdict is out. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stick back. I underestimated them. I'll have to give them that. I was like, it's going to take them 10 to 15 minutes to gather up, get all their weapons in.
Yeah.
So in those 10 to 15 minutes, I'm just going to shoot what I want to shoot post the verdict, and I'm going to get out of the campus. That was the plan. What we didn't know was...
You were alone or you... I mean, of course, you had a cameraman.
I had a camera person. So before I took this decision and communicated this to my channel, I had to obviously take their permission. It was their life too.
Yeah.
And we could see that things were getting heated up. It was to the extent where people who understood English used to come stand next to me when I was doing a live, only to hear and translate it to the top guys who don't understand English, so that they're in the know-how of what is being said about Baba.
Wow.
If we even went beyond accused at that point in time, we'd have been dead. It was as simple as that. And they were very clever with one thing. There were no hotels inside the campus, in the whole of Sirsa. So what they essentially did is, because we didn't have an option, they put us up in Ram Rahim's hotel. And we were just clever enough. We checked in the night before that. We checked the situation out. We were just clever enough to pack up and put everything into our cars so that we were ready to flee. Because we knew that the situation could get so dangerous. And when all of this happened, the time passed, we underestimated them because I thought we'll get to know the verdicts first. Because we had a resource in Panchkula, we had 2 in fact. But what we didn't know is that they might have had a source inside the courtroom. And they got to know way before
before
all
you.
of us. The internet was suspended. There was no way in hell that I could have gotten to know unless and until somebody calls me or I hear it through the OB van, through the satellite.
Oh my God.
That was the only way I could have gotten to know the verdict. And that happened, and we were driving through, and I said, stop here. The verdict was out. We didn't know that they knew 10 minutes before us. And I get down to record. And there was this video journalist, I'd like to give him credit today. His name was Rama Shankar, who was daring enough to stay back with me. And I say, let me show you the visuals, and this is all getting recorded on camera. I'm like, let me show you the visuals post the verdict. And I turn left, and I look back. And I see over 100 people with the same freshly made axes and petrol bombs and lathis running towards me to kill me. And before I even realized, what I had to do is run and jump into my car. And being true to my profession, I must say, I was still saying that, you know what, as you can see, 100 people are running towards me to kill me.
Is there a video that we can see?
That video was aired by CNN News18. I think they have the rights for that, so I'm not sure at the moment if we can use it. But yes, that
But
video,
we should be able to find it on YouTube, maybe.
100%. You should be able to find it, and there was a lot of good feed coming in from that end as well. So before I realized, I jumped into the car with my video journalist. He jumps in. He forgets locking his door. So there's this, while other glasses are broken, there was this tussle between one of the protesters and my VJ to close his door. And my driver's looking at me, like, kya karu? I'm like, what the hell do you mean, kya karu? Gaadi chala. And then he's like, sir, do log khade hai mere samne. Case ho jayega, kuch ho gaya. I'm like, boss, see, Rev, if they move, they move. If they don't, they don't. At this point in time, either I live or they live. So I'm not taking that gamble, not for doing my job.
Yeah.
So we went through those guys.
Did you like?
I hope we didn't injure anybody. To be very honest, I'm not in a position to confirm that. We might have just scraped through or given a couple of scratches to somebody, max. And after that, we drove for 7.5, 8 kilometers. And that's when we reached the last line of defense of the army, because they were not given permission to enter the campus at that point in time. They were standing at the border. And that was when we took a sigh of relief, only for the next 5 minutes, because 5 minutes after that, we're just trying to cope with our attack. And I look to the right, and I see a video journalist whose jaw is hanging, quite literally, because they had broken his jaw. And when we saw that, that's when we understood that, okay, fine, stuff getting real. It's getting really, really serious right now. Due respect to him, we rushed him to the hospital. Until date, he works with screws to his jaw. And that was because of fanatics who couldn't control themselves. And then we suddenly see, how do you put this? We suddenly see a milk factory being burned down by the protesters just because it was owned by the government. We see really educated guys coming and taking shots from, coming and facing the army with their bare chest, saying, "Marte dam tak hum log Baba ji ke saath hai." And there was this time where, the army was doing a flag march. There were no hotels to stay in. There was one fine guy who finally said, "I'll give you a couple of rooms, but I don't have anything to cook for." There's nothing that is open in the entire city or town, so to say. And this one Jawan passes by and he says, "Just remember one thing, guys. Baba ji ke bag kahin bhi ho sakte hai, kahin se bhi aake hamla kar sakte hai." So that was the situation in which we survived for almost 16, 18 hours, all the journalists in one pack together. And yeah, man, when we eventually saw that convoy of hundreds of cars leaving Sirsa, after a point, the one video journalist who caught it on camera, his hands started aching because of the 7 kgs of the camera. They were in hundreds. Mr. Ram Rahim's convoy, when he left Sirsa and before he reached Panchkula, had anywhere above 400 cars. And that's when we realized what this man meant to people and why we were in a situation like that. Yeah. So that was about the Ram Rahim
Crazy.
riots.
And that was your first main, I'm guessing,
Yes, it was.
sting operation.
Yes. It wasn't a sting up. It was more of an investigation which was on camera. Yeah. I wasn't undercover. I was there as a journalist. But yes, it was an investigation considering the fact that we were going around and finding out a lot of details which were never put out before. And the work that was continued after that. Once he went into jail, once he was convicted, to give out the background, to give out how this campus was, how they operated, and then working on finding where Miss Honeypreet was. It's quite a ride, man. And one experience that I'll never forget. And I think it
Miss
was...
Honeypreet was the one who first accused...
where she was the one who was the who is the adopted daughter of Ram Rahim.
Ram Rahim, yeah.
And there was an alleged rumor that he had an affair or whatever with her, and that's why she went through a divorce. So she was also an accused in the riots, obviously. And she left the campus. She was nowhere to be found. She had in fact reached Panchkula with him, if I'm not wrong, and then she went missing. And Aditya Insa was nowhere to be seen. And all in all, Rohit, when it comes to my journey, I think that one assignment of Sirsa, that is what taught me or showed me a mirror and said, okay, this is the situation that you work best in. Where there's danger, where there's that kick coming in for the field, and where you have to think on your feet. I felt I was made to be in situations like that, and that sort of transitioned into executing well-oiled investigations or sting operations, I must say.
Crazy. So that's and how long were you in CNN for?
I was in CNN for a brief period of a year and a half. 2017 to 2018 was when I was there.
Right, and that's where the Gurugram International School.
Yes, the Gurugram International School case is something that I hold very, very close to my heart. Something that I've covered through channels. Even after I went to India today, I had a couple of stories on it. And it also has possibly the blockbuster story that I will reveal today. It was a 7-year-old.
This is an exclusive, not nowhere to be found story, right?
Yes.
So let's give a background to what it was and
Exactly. So this was a 7-year-old whose throat was slit in school 10 minutes after his father had left him at the gate. And when you got there, when you saw the crime scene, when you see a child's washroom being drenched with blood, and in angles which sort of show you how brutally the crime was committed, it pinches your soul in a lot of ways. And that's what this case did to me. And when I saw the father running towards a certain space just to ensure that his child even now is taken care of, that's a sight that I will never forget in my life. But the bigger part of the story was, since day one, so it so happened that 12 or 14 hours, I don't know the exact timeline, I don't remember it right now, but within a few hours, less than a day for sure. Morning, I think we reported the crime, and by the evening...
So as soon as the crime happened, you were there?
Yes.
Okay.
A colleague of mine and I were one of the first journalists to reach there, and we saw everything unfold.
You saw the whole scene. You saw the crime. The police had just fresh come in, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
and you had seen the body.
There was the local police which was there, but the actual battalion of people that had to come in to sort of safeguard the crime scene, etc. They were coming in as we went, and I don't know. I wouldn't want to name that person, but it was just really sad to also see a couple of people trampling onto the crime scene and not having the basic decency to not spoil evidence at that point in time.
Shit.
Which is a basic problem that happens in India with the Ayushi Talwar case, you must have heard.
Correct.
And I don't think that has changed. Cordoning off a crime scene, even till date, with respect to most state police forces, is not done to the extent that it should be done. And that compromises a lot of evidence. Now, when it comes to compromising evidence, that brings me to the biggest story of the Gurugram International School murder case. Since day one, okay, so within hours, less than a day after the crime was reported, the Haryana police presents a bus conductor called Ashok before the media. And this guy goes ahead and confesses, saying, I tried to sodomize the kid. And when the kid resisted, I slit his throat. I had the knife in my bus. I was carrying it to the washroom.
You're saying the bus conductor admitted to committing it? Okay.
He admitted that on camera before the media. The close was done and shut. And I think...
And how long was the duration from the time of the murder to him confessing?
Less than 18 hours.
Okay.
Less than 18 hours. 16 to 18 hours is what I'm guessing right now, but the exact time is not something I'm not sure of at the moment. There, as journalists, we could have just shut the case. And I think collectively as an ecosystem, every single journalist who's worked and every single media house which has aired this story should take pride in this one story, because if it was not for the media and the journalists camping 17 hours a day outside that school, a CBI probe would have never been launched and the justice would have never been delivered.
Right.
It was very murky for us that within hours, somebody who's limping, seems to be a little sedated, okay, is coming in and confessing that I tried to sodomize the kid. And all of this we got to know later on when we went to his village, started talking to his family, understood the fact that he had kids. And people were very sure of the fact that, he wasn't somebody who would try to sodomize a kid out of all things, because he had an established family. Then we went and asked them if everything was fine with his legs. Said, yeah, he used to walk to his bus every single day. If he's limping right now, something happened. Now, this was on the sidelines. On the other hand, I remember this one peculiar interview of Mr. Mohit, who was the advocate of the conductor in question.
Okay.
It so happened that all the lawyers got together in Gurugram and said, we will not take up the conductor's case at all. So a lawyer from Rohtak had to come in and take his case.
Oh.
This was a cabal of sorts. And since day one, this man has been saying that there's this one guy that I can see during the course of that CCTV footage. Looks like a 15, 16-year-old. It's not clear as to who this guy is. But what the hell is he doing there? He has something to do with the murder for sure. And it's not the conductor. This was within a week of the crime being reported, mind you.
And all of this information is coming out through journalists.
Yes.
Not through the cops or not through the CBI
No,
yet.
it's either the lawyer of the conductor or the victim or the journalist. Right? At that point in time, the police brushed it under the carpet, just went out and said one thing, that the case is shut according to us because we found the culprit.
Right.
It was this guy who tried to sodomize him, is confessed. I mean, what else is left? But once the media started camping there and piling pressure on them, the political fraternity had to come down. Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar had come down, and there was this brief time where there was a lathi charge on the parents who were protesting.
Oh.
I'll have to give it to the parents there, Rohit. Within hours of cremating his son, this man was on national media on a debate fighting for justice. It takes a lot for a father to do that.
Yeah.
And when we saw him, very rarely do you find family members coming out and being out in the open with respect to the fight.
Correct.
But when we saw that he was doing that, it gave us more power to be able to use the...
Take this forward.
Yeah, use the power of being the fourth pillar and ensure that the right is done. And eventually a CBI probe was launched. I still remember this. I got a call from a source who said, यार इस हफ्ते में इस बच्चे को 8 घंटे 3 बार question किया in the presence of an elder because he was a juvenile at that point in time. In my head,
Who are you talking about at this point?
Exactly. That's the whole question, right? Until then, everybody was clueless as to who this guy is. Why on earth is the CBI questioning him thrice a week? Because the CBI is the premier most agency of your country. They don't have time to waste.
Correct.
In my head, having covered crime before, I knew that he had to have something to do with the murder. Otherwise, this questioning wouldn't have happened.
Correct.
That too, they wouldn't be so dicey with a juvenile out of all people. A few days later, that is exactly, I think, 11 days later, the official word comes out.
From the CBI
has arrested a 16-year-old student from the same school who was the actual murderer and came out and gave a clean chit to the conductor, saying he had absolutely nothing to do with
CBI
it.
gave a clean chit to the guy who, basically you're saying, confessed 18 hours after the murder.
Exactly.
And then took another kid from the same school.
Saying this guy did it.
Okay.
And very important point to note here. Same set of evidences. Right? The same CCTV footage, the same blood stains, the same knife. Everything was the same. 2 different investigative agencies, 2 absolutely different verdicts, whereas one was right and one could be proven in court. I mean, there's still no verdict. The case is still sub judice.
Oh, it's still not...
It's still not done, and they're still deciding on whether or not they should try him as an adult. I mean, recently, a couple of weeks ago, it was declared that he should be tried as an adult because he's above 16 and below 18. This went on for quite some time. The supplementary charge sheet was not filed for a lot of time and a lot of glitches here and there. It was during this time that one of my sources called me up and gave me the biggest story of my life. He called me up at around 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. Saying, come home. I said, sir, I'm anyway coming to you tomorrow. Why should I come home at this hour? Like, this is very big, Akash, just come home. I called up the office. I said, I need a car right now. I need to go. Like, what are you doing at this hour? Why would you meet a source at 11 p.m.? I said, no, this is important. I went in. All he does is connects this Bluetooth speaker to his phone and plays a recording. I'm numb for the next few minutes, okay? And I still stand by this story, Rohit, and I'll tell you why I still need to stand by it.
तो आपके ऊपर क्या बहुत ज़्यादा प्रेशर है केस से हटने का?
नहीं, हटने का नहीं, केस बंद करने का है सर।
अच्छा,
ये तो आप अपनी कंजम्पशन के लिए रखिए, बाकी आयोग को हिट कर दीजिए कि एक दिन नहीं आया, गुरुग्राम कोर्ट में भी नहीं आया, वो श्रीमती कहेगी कि वो बीमार है, लेकिन आप बोलो कि नहीं वो तो ज्वाइन किया हुआ है, ठीक है ना सर, और ये झूठ बोल रहे हैं। समझ गए ना सर, क्योंकि लीड कमिश्नर तक जा रही है।
That recording was of the investigating officer of the Central Bureau of Investigation telling the lawyer of the victim that there is pressure on me from one section of the Central Bureau of Investigation to catch this actual murderer, get him convicted, but do not venture into the botch up of the Haryana police because my lead goes all the way up. His words again, quote unquote, nothing that I'm saying or you're saying. Because my lead goes all the way up to the then Commissioner of Police of Gurugram. And this is, in my sense, this was the first time that on national media the entire CBI versus CBI war was unearthed.
Wow.
Because this officer in question belonged to one of those camps. And he claimed that the other camp was piling pressure on him.
Pressurizing him to not to reveal the right killer, but not let it show as the fuck up of
Yes,
Guru.
and this people can find on Twitter. The story is out there. We've played out an entire figurative audio with the victim's lawyer on camera, accepting the fact that this was his voice and he was the one who spoke to the investigating officer.
Wow.
Now, what happened after that was very shocking. In order to do damage control, so to say, it so happened that an absolute denial was issued by the agency, saying this tape is absolutely fake and malicious, and this is untrue. Post which we dropped that story. Only to realize that 6 months later, the same premier-most institution uses this story in one of their affidavits in the Supreme Court of India to say that this particular investigating officer is someone who should not be counted upon because he revealed XYZ details as telecasted by CNN News18 on this particular day.
Wow.
So that's exactly how it unfolded. And till date, I would go to the extent of saying we all stick by that story. And post that, a lot of things happened in the CBI. There was a CBI versus CBI war. The number 1 and the number 2 filed cases against each other.
Yeah.
Indian Express came out with that
Correct.
blockbuster story. But the tip, it all started unfolding with this story that I'm talking about.
Okay, so we still haven't gotten to the crux of who the murderer was.
As on date, it is under trial. The conviction hasn't happened. But having observed, covered, and researched extensively on this story, I genuinely believe that the CBI has got it right this time. And the most shocking part is the reason that was revealed, which was the fact that the 16-year-old did not prepare for his examination.
So allegedly, the 11th grader, I think, or 10th
Yes.
grader, 11th or 10th grader, basically went into the washroom, slit the kid's throat.
So the story or the version that was put out by the agency was this, that he had not prepared for the examination and he wanted to get it postponed. And he felt that doing something like this would have resulted in that. He carried the knife. He was looking for somebody to attack at that point in time. And unfortunately, the victim and the culprit in this case had a common class. So were acquainted with each other.
Got it.
So that's exactly when the victim walked in. So he put his hand around the victim's shoulder, and all of this was there in the CCTV footage from what the sources have told us. They takes him into the washroom and slits his throat. That's it. And how barbaric that crime was,
swear.
it can just shake you up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. Till date, fortunately, I'm in touch with the family. We do speak every now and then. But if there's one story that I will never forget, that I will be proud of, the entire media fraternity should be proud of, it's that one story. Because if it wasn't for the media piling pressure, I think, imagine the victim's anyway gone. His family's life has been destroyed because of the loss. The conductor's life is destroyed.
The conductor, coming back to the conductor, you said he confessed. What happened with that?
He came out and he evidently accused and named officers after that who forced him to confess. He claimed that he was electrocuted. He claimed that he was sedated. He claimed that he was thrashed before he was presented to the media to confess what he did. And he eventually came out and said, I don't even know what the hell sodomizing means. I've never even encountered. And by then, it was so sad, Rohit, to see that his family was disowned in the village. No other source of income, so to say. And by then, a lot of power clouds had come into the scene to make use of it one way or the other. A lot of times you'll observe this in sensational stories, that it starts off as fight for justice, but a lot of times it is hijacked by a lot of groups of people.
Correct.
Who are interested in driving it to their agenda.
Okay, so my next question is, what motivated the Gurugram police to switch the case? Or allegedly sort of get someone else to be the culprit of this?
Well, I'll tell you what, as on date, on record, they still say that they were inefficient, so to say. That's the reason they could not arrive at this conclusion. Some of them even might stick to their stand. But having spoken to a few of these officers who were named by the conductor, again, this does not establish anything, but these are just dots that need to be taken into consideration. That bar association or the group of lawyers who boycotted the conductor and did not take his case up, the actual culprit, who was the accused today, who's the 16-year-old, his father was a member of that group.
Oh, his father was a lawyer himself.
Yes, he was a lawyer himself. He was very respected in that scene. And there were also rumors about, him having clout to the extent of those who are very high up in the state.
Got it.
As on date, apart from the people who've botched it up, nobody's in a position to pinpoint and say this is the reason why they did this. But there had to be a major reason.
Right.
Because you cannot be so wrong, and you cannot be so wrong within hours of the murder. And if you have willfully violated somebody's privacy in terms of their bodily being, and if you have intentionally, if what the conductor is alleging is true, then you had to have some push from somewhere to be able to do. The sad part is, Rohit, till date, they're all doing their jobs well and happy, right? I mean, I don't think the lives of those who botched this case up have been impacted even remotely to the extent that the conductor's life has been impacted or his family's life has been impacted.
Wow. Okay. That was a very heavy story.
Exactly.
But just talking about such things, having those experiences, looking at the things that you have looked at, isn't there some sort of like trauma that maybe you go through or you've gone through? Or does that do those things still affect you till date when you think about them?
There were a few stories, some which I've spoken to you about, some which I might during the course of the next few minutes, which have changed my definitions for a lifetime, right? Changed my priorities for a lifetime. Primarily because growing up, while I may not have come from a really privileged background, my parents did ensure that I got what I wanted to be able to be successful in life.
Right.
A lot of problems that we have and we think are like as big as life,
they're not.
They don't really matter anymore when you hit the ground and you see people fighting out the most brutal, uncalled for, unsolicited problems, unexpected, with a smile on their face.
Yeah.
I was covering the Kerala floods for India Today.
When was this?
This was in 2019, my friend.
So you left. So after this case, you left CNN and then you joined.
Yes, after the Ram murder case, I had a brief stint. I had done a couple of other sting operations. I had busted the first time. So Mr. Radhakrishnan Nayak, parallelly, he gave me a spy camera one fine day and he said, Akash, I don't know why, but I feel you can be good at this. So this is your first idea. The first idea he gave me was the nexus between doctors and path labs and how medical certificates can be doctored in India.
CNN News18 exclusive exposes the deep rot, so-called medical schemes, or rather scheming to bleed the patient.
He said, just give it a try. Was executed perfectly. That sting went on air to the extent where we proved that any certificate except for an HIV certificate, again, that also because it's very serious and investigations happen on that because of how it can spread. You can get that for $500. And every time your doctor prescribes, by your doctor, I don't mean your doctor, but the ones we had exposed, every time the doctor prescribes you to get a test done in an A or a B test center, it's because he's got a commission. We exposed this, and that was, I would say, one of the smallest things that I did in my life, but that was the start. After that, I went on to expose the magic mushroom racket in Tamil Nadu.
What is the magic mushroom racket?
In the Narcotics Act, which rules over the distribution, the supply, the growth of narcotics in India, there's two chemicals which have been named as illegal. That is psilocybin and psilocin. And there are variable pronunciations for that. While they've mentioned that, they haven't mentioned the words magic mushrooms, right?
Got it.
So using this, there
So
was
just for context, magic mushrooms are natural psychedelics that you get.
yes,
Right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. The effects, according to literature, the effects that the mushrooms have been compared to other psychedelic drugs like maybe LSD or other drugs, and they're known to be severe.
Right.
So there was this entire market around the Kodaikanal, Vattakanal area in Tamil Nadu, and we had received information that shrooms are easily available and they can be delivered anywhere in India for that matter. So we went in, we tried to figure out as to what it was. Much to our surprise, there was room delivery of shrooms that was happening. There was room delivery of drugs that was happening. And these guys promised to deliver drugs to anywhere in the country.
That was in Kodaikanal, you said.
Yes, that was in Vattakanal and Kodaikanal, and also this place called Manavanur where the source was.
Okay.
This was the first time that somebody legit extended a legitimate death threat to me, right, by being 5 feet away. So I wanted to see the source. My entire thing was done. I had all the elements to prove it. But they say, Okida jo hota hai na, ki I want a full-fledged story.
Yeah.
I want it to be conclusive. So I convinced this guy to take me to the source in the jungle. This is around, say, 12 kilometers into the jungle. We're walking for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And then later on, he's like, okay, this is where we grow it. And he shows me the source. Everything's on camera. I've got it all. Now, the issue here is, Rohit, a lot of people don't understand this, being on the outside. Whenever it is that a journalist executes an investigation or a sting operation, Indian law says that if a transaction happens, if I take the drugs from the dealer and I give him the money, I am liable for prosecution for possessing that drug.
Got it.
Essentially meaning that every single time we will
Even
have
if it's
to-
part of the...
Yes.
Okay.
So every single time we will have to talk to that dealer to the extent of closing the deal and then call it off. So 12 to 16 kilometers into a jungle, I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, I can't buy them anymore. And this person thinks I don't understand Tamil, but I understand Tamil and I can speak Tamil to save my life.
Got it.
right? And I put it myself to be a North Indian so that, he gets that vibe. And he looks at my driver, who's a Tamilian. And he says, in Tamil, he says, I will bury him right here if he does not buy 10 dozens of shrooms from me.
Wow.
And I knew this guy means his threat because otherwise he would have said in a language that he thinks I understand.
Yeah.
That was a time where for the first...
So he didn't know you understood Tamil, but you got what he was saying.
Yeah, I knew this guy had plans of killing me. And it was then that I convinced him saying, who carries so much of cash in the pocket and all of that. I obviously can't GPay or Paytm you all of this stuff. Let me get to the... luckily, the only ATM was very far off. I'm like, why don't you come to the ATM? I'm going to withdraw, give you money there. And the next I know, I sit in my car. Luckily, this time again, we packed up our bags and put it in the car because there's one instinct that has always helped me while doing investigations, which was I just knew when to stop. I knew that ek aur step, you've ruffled so many feathers that ek aur step and you're dead. So I had felt that and I had packed up everything and I put it in my car, ready to leave. I rush out of the jungle. I'm like, meet you at the ATM. I sat in the car.
Your driver's with you.
Yeah, my driver's with me, and all I say is, your next stop is the Coimbatore airport. You are not stopping anywhere else.
Wow.
So this guy was standing at the airport, looking at our car, staring at us. I mean, he would have killed me right there, and we just ran past him and went to the airport and took a flight to Goa to do our next thing. So that's. So after a few stings like this with CNN News18 is when I moved to India today. And that was where I covered. It was the first 8 days were very frustrating, in fact.
Got it.
And anybody who wants to be a journalist should know this. So a lot of India today, it so happens that India today has a lot of more competition than most other English channels. The
Right.
bureau strength in general is a lot in India today. India Today had what a 5-6 member crime team to cover only for Raj Tak. They were that big.
Okay.
So a lot of people told me when I was making that shift to India Today that maybe it's not the right move for you right now because you come on air every day in CNN News18. You're given the preference. You're in the limelight. Why would you want to go start off from scratch all over again, where you have to make your mark among, say, 30 reporters, 40 reporters, etc. I did that because I was like, I don't think I'm good enough if I don't battle it out with the best and make my mark in a place that is that competitive. But for the first 8 days, I didn't have a story at hand. I wasn't on air for 8 days. It suddenly started seeping in that maybe people were right? Maybe this was a bad move. I was covering everything from the CBSE paper leaks to the Ram Rahim riots to any other case that came up,
Right.
the Ryan murder case when I was at CNN News18. And maybe it was the wrong move for me to move to India Today.
Right.
And it was on that day that my life turned, on the 8th day. My shift was about to start at 12. Though journalists don't work in shifts, we do have our timings every now and then to ensure that we're sane as well. So at 12 o'clock it was about to start. I was sleeping at around 10ish. I get a call from my editor saying, Akash, the time has finally come. You need to go to Rewari. And at that point, I had no context.
You had to go to?
Rewari, which is a place in Haryana. I had no context of what happened in Rewari. I was like, what happened? So it's like, there was a gang rape which was reported. And we need to push out a show for Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai's, push out a package for Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai's show. And therefore, you need to travel to Rewari right now. And I was like, okay, fine. How many days am I going to be there? And he said, aaj jana, package shoot karna, wapas aa jana. That was the plan. I went there, reached Rewari. The victim was at the hospital. And I don't know what happened to me, Rohit. I just don't know what happened to me. I just looked at my camera person and I said, I'm not leaving this place right now. The expectation from me was to do a couple of lives, get a few visuals and get out. No, I think 2 other national media channels had sent their reporters, but everybody was at the hospital. And the crime scene was approximately an hour and a half away from the hospital at that point in time. I just called up my office and I said, listen, I'm not coming back today. I want to visit the crime scene. They said, why? I said, what sort of a crime reporter am I if I don't even visit the spot? The scene is what will tell me everything. I will not obviously tramp onto the scene or spoil it or once it's cordoned off, I'm not going to spoil any evidence or corrupt any evidence. But I want to see where it happened. I want to go to the village, speak to people and understand how it all unfolded. And it so happened that I went to the village, started talking to the family of the victims, the culprits, etc. and unearthed an entire investigation within 1 hour, which told me that for 22 hours after committing this brutal rape, the culprits were in the village. The next morning, went to the victim's house and threatened her, saying, if you report this crime, we're going to kill you. And for at least 22 hours, they were scot-free and the police did not even send a search party.
Wow, okay.
And if I had stuck back to that hospital...
Then you wouldn't have never...
Never. Right? Right from... So, that is where investigation...
What is the name of this case, just for context?
It is the Rewari Gangrape.
Okay.
That is what it was called. And I'll give you the story and how saddening the stories from behind the scenes can be at certain points. So this victim's father was somebody who was big on kabaddi, was a coach at some point of time in life. So all of these youngsters who sort of had a way to get spoilt in life, get diverted into things that they shouldn't get diverted to. This person used to train all of them in kabaddi and support them from a sports quota perspective to ensure that they get somewhere in their life, right? Get recruited by the forces and it was one of those students and his friends that eventually ended up gang raping his daughter.
Oh.
And the worst part of it all, and I don't mean to attack or label any one community, region or otherwise, but the worst part of it all during this entire episode was when you spoke to 22, 23-year-olds who have access to everything that you and I have access to, who have access to Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. All of these guys come up to you and say, लड़की लड़के को अकेले मिलने गई ये तो होना ही था.
Oh.
So a woman, according to a lot of people there, meeting a man alone and maybe even consenting to have a drink is consent for sex. And if she doesn't do it, the man has all the right to rape her. That was the mindset that we had to battle with. And then we established how the cops didn't act. When was the first zero FIR lodged? Why did it take 2 hours for the zero FIR to reach the respective police station that it had to reach? After that, for 22 hours, why did the police not act? It was the accused's sister herself coming out and clearly stating that my brother was here for almost 12 to 14 hours after you say that the rape happened. The rape was committed, and he hasn't done anything. So that essentially means, so I established an entire timeline from the registration of the zero FIR to 22 hours after that, when they finally flee that particular territory.
Right.
And we realized that the police didn't do anything. And the worst part is, sometimes, this is my lesson to a lot of people who want to get into investigations, sometimes it just takes a thought. We went to the location of the press conference of the SIT chief. She was the SP of Nu at that point in time, who was brought in specially for this case. I looked at her entire team and she was introducing her team during the press conference. And I saw that the SHO, who was responsible for not acting for 22 hours, is still a part of the SIT.
Okay.
And all I had to do was call up the DGP and say, sir, how can you do this? How can you not even remove him off the case? And then first he denied, and then he said, give me some time, thank you for flagging this, and I'll call you back. 5 minutes later, I get a call back saying, now that you've flagged it, he's been taken off the case. Now that was the biggest possible investigation which happened with just a flag of an idea.
Yeah.
And eventually, when all of this was rolled out, then every channel rushed their reporters, 2 or 3 reporters in. It became how big it became. For almost 7.5 days, 8 days, we were at it. A person who left with one pair of clothes from
with
Delhi,
the idea to just come back, just shoot and come back.
Stayed back for 8 days. Eventually, Mr. Rajnath Singh, the then minister in the cabinet for the portfolio that he held, had to do a press conference, come out and give an assurance that justice will be delivered. And this is another case that is very close to my heart. This is only second to, I guess, the Kerala flood incident that I've had. The Kerala floods incident is something that destroyed all sorts of definitions that I've had in my life. It was an area where...
So Kerala floods was also with India Today?
Yes, with India Today.
Got it.
So this is a very funny incident. I think this was in a way, my last stint as a journalist. My last big assignment. Before that, I had done an investigation on how illegal immigrants, specifically Rohingyas who were coming in from wherever they were coming in from the specific territory in Myanmar, they were becoming Indian citizens illegally, right from birth certificates to Indian passports.
Okay.
These guys had gotten their hands on everything possible. So we did an entire investigation exposing how 243 people made to India's voters list.
Right.
So after that, so my parents had come down to Delhi to spend some time with me, and I got a call saying, you need to go out for the Kerala floods. And I said, fine, let's go. For almost a week after that, we were there. This was a landslide site that I think Rahul Gandhi and everybody had visited post that.
Right.
It was in a place called Kavalapara in Kerala. There were around 35 houses from what the locals told us. And within seconds, they're all under 30 feet of rubble. Not a single survivor. And all this happens in the middle of the night. Within a span of 5 seconds, nobody really knew when it happened.
Okay.
Because there was no survivor who had the technology to look at the time and say, okay, this is exactly when it happened. When we eventually found out was when we saw that a particular clock was stopped at a certain point in time.
Oh.
That's when we found out that this is when
This
the
may be
landslide
the-
happened. Yeah, this may be the time. So it was during that time that I went in. I was one of the first journalists to reach that spot. And there was this guy with a broken leg. And I found out as to who he was. I didn't want to, rupture any emotions at that point. Everybody was overwhelmed. Things were very sensitive. And at that point in time, I was told that this person came out of his house. He didn't have cell phone reception inside. Came out just to take a call because he couldn't hear the other person in his house. He got saved, but the landslide broke his leg. Lost 9 members of his family, including a month-old baby. And unfortunately, because of the landslide and the time of the night, that place was cut off partly from other regions. And I had to alone, without any light, just maybe a phone torch in his hand, which got switched off later on, had to survive for hours together with himself, looking at an entire colony under 30 feet of rubble.
Hoping to get some sort of rescue coming.
And when I met that man and I had to interview him, I didn't know what to ask, man. And I think it's but it's very important to put these stories out, right? I think it's moments like these that make you want to go back to the field, make you want to experience all of this once again, because I mean, I wouldn't say experience somebody's despair, but just be out there on the field when things are unfolding at the epicenter of where the action is. Because a lot of definitions I built up until that point of success, of what I want to be in life, all of that changed. All of that changed, and it became very passion driven. It became very moral driven. Again, not morals that maybe somebody else might set for us, but that we set for ourselves.
Right.
So yeah, that was something that I was very.
That's close to you.
That's
and
close to
changed
my
you.
heart and changed me in a lot of ways. Yes.
Wow. Okay. You had also so with India Today, you had also told me about this really interesting case of you being part of the whole resort politics in Karnataka that happened in 2019.
Oh yeah, no, that happened when I was with CNN News18.
Okay,
It happened in 2018 before I went to India Today. So this is how it happened. So I got a call from my managing editor. And I will not name the exact resort or how exactly it unfolded, but there were multiple resorts in which MLAs were holed up, etc. So I got a call after my shift around 10:30ish saying, you're flying down to Bangalore tomorrow. And I said, why? I mean, you have an entire team there. We have three or four reporters there who are already there, who know the state in and out. I mean, I'm not a local in Karnataka. I'm from Hyderabad. He said, no, I need somebody who can get me investigations, or let's not call them investigations, but get me elements from inside the resort as to what exactly is happening, because these guys are responsible to form a government and take care of the well-being of the citizens and not trade at this juncture, right? Because Karnataka has a history, if you remember. Karnataka has a history of governments being toppled day in and day out.
Yeah.
I think in the last 6 or 7 terms, only one chief minister has completed his 5 years, which was Siddaramaiah.
Correct.
So, people were frustrated, and it was important to put these stories out as to what was happening behind those 4 walls. And then I said, sir, okay, fine. I know this is the biggest assignment as on date that I have in my life, but let me just find out if it's possible. And I called up my reporters on the ground and I asked them if it was possible, and they said, man, you might come down from UAE, US, wherever the hell, but you're not entering this place, because people who've covered politics for 30 years in the state are at that gate, because they're very big on security at this point in time, and it won't be possible for you to do it. I said, let's just give it a try. I didn't want to lose out that chance. And eventually it so happened, Rohit, that I landed at 5 a.m. I entered the X place or the X resort at 7:30. I was inside, getting elements and stinging these people who were so-called responsible for the lives of citizens for 17 hours. Precisely, I think anywhere between 30 to 34 videos were sent out to the channel at that point in time. Right from how things were unfolding, who they think can be sold to another party, to who they think is vulnerable at this juncture, to what kind of alcohol they were drinking while the state was in despair. It was, I think, in terms of simplifying investigations, I could not simplify it more. I mean, this was one investigation that showed me that we humans have a tendency of overcomplicating things, right? So it was later on when I was asked as to how I entered, that's a different story altogether. And it was something as simple as this. If you if you say want to know where they're headed to next, just ask them when they're leaving because you want another room. It's as simple as that.
No, but before you get into the depth of the story, just give audience a little bit of context of what is resort politics? Why does it happen?
Okay, resort politics is simple. In 2018, what exactly happened was no party, while there was one party which was leading in terms of the number of seats, which was the BJP at that point in time, no party had attained majority. Majority or the magic figure which lets them form the government in the state. It essentially meant that the JDS, which was a third party, third in terms of the number of seats that they had won, were the kingmakers.
Right.
So, in this sense, obviously both the frontline parties, which was the BJP and the Congress, were doing all that they can to get JDS onto their ship to be able to formulate the government. And it was during this time that all the political parties hold up all of their MLAs in respective resorts. Some even went beyond the city, for that matter, of Bengaluru. I think they also went to the extent of Hyderabad later on. Only to ensure that they do not have any contact with people from outside the party. In a sense, they're not sold, or they do not jump ship to another party. They do not resign. Basically, this was the last...
Just to safeguard them from being sold to another party.
Exactly. It's
and
holding your
being,
pack
being in
together.
contact with.
Holding your pack together. It was as simple as that. So it was during that time that I was tasked with the responsibility of entering most of these places and understanding as to what's happening on the inside.
Right.
When I saw that, it was, how do I put this? It was expected, but at the same time, it was also a little alarming to see how, after a point, the time that it was taking did not really matter to those it had to matter to.
Right.
And that, like I said, there were a lot of interesting elements that I put out during the course of that time. Was gladly supported by a lot of my colleagues who never revealed the fact that I was the one who was doing it, because at that point in time the danger was pretty high. So it was eventually when they left that place that I ended up leaving with them. And I still think there's this visual of me leaving in a car right behind them, so something like that.
But how did you get into the resort? Say that, because it wasn't accessible, right? It was literally just for the MLAs that they were trying to safeguard, right? And you told me this really interesting way of how you got in. Please.
So this is where the simplification of investigations comes in, right? So all I said is, I had a video journalist with me at that point. I asked my video journalist to get off the car and behave like he doesn't know me. Now, I knew one thing. I had to outwit one person that's at the gate. Beyond that, I'm free, because this was not just a resort, there were also houses inside, and I could have been a guest with anybody, right? And the whole plan was we actually had a room booked inside.
Right.
But nobody who even has a room booked was being allowed to get in. That was the issue.
Right.
So it was pretty much not revealing what was not asked of me, right? So I asked my driver to pick my luggage up from the dicky, place it on the front seat. I mean, I was pretty young back then, not as old as I am right now, so I looked like a college student. I said, don't look left, don't look right, just go straight, stop at the gate.
Okay.
Let whoever wants to come in and question me, let them come in and question me. And this was an hour and a half after I landed in Bangalore. And all the reporters have been trying for 3 or 4 days. I mean, they're all holed up on the side. They're trying to figure out how they can do this. And this guy came in. I rolled down the window. And he said, "Kahan ja rahe ho aap?" And I knew one thing, Rohit, that there is a rather stereotypical way of how somebody who's entering an elite place talks to those at the gate. Right? I mean,
Got it.
Sometimes it's about using those stereotypes.
Yeah.
As bad as it may sound, or as bad as I might feel right now for speaking to him a certain way, I just looked at him and I said, "Aap kaun hote hai rokne wale? Mera room booked hai andar." And trust me,
Confidence.
That is all it took. He looked at that luggage on the front seat and he said, "Okay, this guy looks like a tourist. Definitely doesn't seem like a journalist. There's no video journalist. Looks like a college student. Doesn't look like somebody who's too serious in life." And the way I spoke might have come across like an elitist. And he just went and convinced all the 20 people out there who were, or the party workers who were standing there to ensure nobody else enters. And he opened the gate for me and he says, "Please get in." That's all it took. It took me 15 seconds.
Wow.
It was just to understand the fact that you had to play with one human being for 15 seconds. Not even play. You just had to, how do you put this? Work around. Play could be the wrong word. Work around one human being. And it just took you 15 seconds.
Right.
It's as simple as that for me. And as far as you see investigations to that level, and you simplify to that extent, I think they're very easy to execute.
Got it. Okay. Cool. So this was your... These were your major chunk of investigative journalism reports that you had come out with. What happened after that, right? So you moved on from India Today, or were there more things that happened in India Today as well?
With India Today, like I said, I did an investigation which again is very close to my heart because it comes from Hyderabad. The situation had become very alarming when we realized that I had access to one particular document which is on air and there's proof of it everywhere as well. The Telangana State Intelligence Unit had written to one of the commissioners in the Telangana police stating that illegal Rohingya immigrants are becoming Indian citizens illegally. And in the recent past, at least 2 cases of them harboring terrorists have come to light. It was a major internal security threat according to me, and this needed to be investigated. So, all in all, one of the case studies, you'll be shocked. I think the video is there, we can show it to your viewers as well. So this guy came to India in 2006, 2007. First got a birth certificate saying he was born in India 26 years before that. Using that birth certificate, took a rented house, took the electricity bill, went and applied for an Aadhaar, gave $500 to somebody, got an Aadhaar done. By encapsulating all of these, applied for an Indian passport. Before all of that, he went to an educational institution, paid 1,000 rupees, convinced them somehow, and took an educational certificate saying he graduated from a school in Hyderabad. And then he traveled to Dubai. And that's when a lot of things were found out, that he was not even Indian.
Okay.
So you're talking about a family which has a UNHCR card with another name. And which has everything from a birth certificate to an Indian passport on another name. So it was very alarming for us to understand the fact that, okay, if these guys commit a crime, the name on the Indian documents is obviously fake. And this flee, what are you going to do? How on earth are you going to ever track them down?
Yeah.
So that investigation happened. And post the Kerala floods is when I decided to quit journalism. Quit active journalism, as sad as that might sound. I mean, I still have an itch for the field. I still love the field.
It was because of what you witnessed during the Kerala floods. Is that why you decided to leave?
I don't think so. And I'll be very honest here. There's 2 reasons why somebody will continue to be in a profession, right? All of these things that I experienced during the course of my investigations were very personal. They changed me as a person, not as a professional. As a professional, I always believed in keeping my emotions aside and being very objective on my stories, which I had to be. But at certain points, involving emotions became mandatory in certain stories where we did.
Right.
Because if you're talking to a victim or interviewing a victim, you had to be sensitive to an extent. You can't be brutal with your questions.
Yeah.
So apart from those instances, I was pretty bang on professionally in terms of being objective. But the 2 reasons which would drive my sustenance in that industry is you're either minting money, to be very practical about profession. B is if you're being able to be true to a passion that you've developed. During the course of my stints with 3 of India's largest broadcast media houses, without taking the name of that one particular media house, I've also had the experience of my investigation being compromised because of a certain stakeholder having a stake in an ex-entity. Right? And in today's day, though I will say this with a caution and with a disclaimer, there are still a lot of my colleagues, my close friends out there, a lot of really, really good journalists who are out there who are still fighting the good battle. They're still putting stories out that matter. But in my experience, I felt that I could not do it to the extent that I wanted to. I mean, even if that one investigation of mine was compromised, for me it was a compromise.
That's why a lot of these young journalists are now going as independent journalists rather than being associated with.
The editorial bias, I would say, is very evident after a line. And that's for everybody to see. yes, there are groups like India Today. I would name that for sure. There are groups like CNN News18. There are groups like Republic TV, NDTV, who all have their own set of journalists. According to me, to let individual bias come in very subtly at some point, I think it's humanly okay to do that, unless and until you're influencing the end product of the story altogether.
Right.
But because it happened with me a couple of times and I did not agree with what was happening, so it's two reasons. And man, it's out there, and I don't need to be stating it, but to be as blunt, journalism as on date does not pay as well as most other industries.
Right.
For somebody who's risking his life, for somebody who's out there during COVID, I'm pretty sure a lot of my colleagues. In fact, I lost somebody I really, really respected in the industry during the COVID time because he was busy covering the Prayagraj temple inauguration.
Okay.
And he was due to get married in 2 months.
Oh God.
So I genuinely believe it's a noble profession, and people risk their lives day in and day out, no matter where they are, irrespective of whether or not they're crime journalists or investigative journalists or wherever they are, right? Even a health reporter entering a COVID ward was risking his or her life.
Yeah.
So when you're playing a game that high stakes, you're either compensated monetarily to that extent and you're satisfied, or you're able to be true to your passion that you've developed. But when both aren't there, I decided to be very honest with myself. Yes, there is money in journalism once you've invested. As on date, I think once you've invested 10, 12, 15 years. I think the landscape right now is changing with the likes of the Quint, the print coming in, everything becoming digital. I'm talking of an era where I think Quint had just come in and the print came in after all of that. So I'm talking of an era where digital media houses hadn't taken over to this extent.
Yeah.
And they pay much better than traditional media.
And now you have News Laundry, you have Wire.
Exactly.
You have, yeah.
So my point is, that is the reason I took a very willful choice for my career. I knew I did not have 12 years or 15 years to invest. I have responsibilities back home. And I just had the drive to be compensated for what I was putting in. Come on, man. After being undercover and doing an investigation, I didn't want to come back and think about whether or not I should order from Swiggy during the last week of the month. It's as honest, I'm being as honest as I can be.
I get what you mean.
So when all of this happened, luckily I quit journalism and I got an offer extended by the team of Mr. Jagan Mohan Reddy, the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister. They were looking for somebody who has hands-on national media experience to build a national media strategy vertical for them. And a comms
And when was this?
This was in 2019 that I took over.
2019.
Once
End of
I quit
2019?
from India Today. 2020 mid-Feb is when I actively took over in Vijayawada, right before the lockdown. But I had quit India Today in 2019 December.
Right.
So it was after that this offer was extended to me. And it was one of the most challenging stints that I've ever had, considering COVID had just hit. Most bureaucrats or most people who are in the administration are in a lose-lose situation.
Before you go into that, I want to know, I don't know how much you can talk about it, but what is it like working as like a PR person for a politician, especially a chief minister, right? As a person who doesn't have any insider knowledge of this, I would think that there is a lot of shady shit going on, right? I don't know if you can talk about it or, whatever it is. But as a person who's an outsider, who doesn't know any of what goes on inside, I feel like a lot of shady stuff goes on inside, right? Every day, as far as I see it, every day there is some or the other thing that the PR person is trying to hide from the eyes of the public. There are a lot of stories that are twisted to the media as well. If you can share anything of those.
Okay. Let me be as candid as I can be. I'm not hiding anything for sure. When I was a journalist and before I became a PR professional and before I saw politics from the closest quarters like I did during my stint there, even I was of the opinion that every politician's corrupt. I mean, looking at it from a journalist's lens, that's what you always feel, that these guys are dark, murky, they're always into shady deals. But when I started working with people on the inside, and I'm talking about politicians across the board, I'm not talking about the one man or two people that I've worked with. That was the impression that I had when I was a journalist. But when I started working with these guys, I realized that more often than not, and this is very important to understand, these guys are in a lose-lose situation. COVID, for example, right? If you impose a lockdown, there's going to be an entire section which is going to bash you up. Because, I mean, there are people whose livelihood is dependent on being out there on the street. If you don't impose a lockdown, people die of COVID. It's as simple as that. And I was working in a state, mind you, which had the capacity to carry out 0 RT-PCR tests.
Okay.
Right? When COVID hit, Andhra Pradesh could not even carry out 1 RT-PCR test. All the samples had to be sent to Hyderabad to get them done. From there to, I would say, topping the test per million charts for months together, the state had come a long way. During this time, we never fudged numbers actively, or we never misled any journalist or any public stakeholder. But yes, there were certain things that were essentially nipped in the bud when they had to be.
Right.
Because it only out of the fear that they could cause panic. I'll give you a very simple example, and this was a trend during the lockdown, right? Every now and then you saw these random videos of an individual making a video with his phone saying, you know what, I'm going breathless, I'm symptomatic, nobody's giving me a bed, etc., etc. So it so happened that in the rush of putting news out, a couple of them I'm even close to, I had this conversation with them. A lot of influencers, journalists, people across the board started reposting these videos out of concern, as they called it.
Correct.
But what they did not realize is when something like this is flagged, it is obviously taken up at the topmost level of the government and the administration. And it essentially meant dedicating resources during a crisis to go and check this case out. 9 out of 10 times. Okay, and I will not say 10 because there must have been that odd case that I did not come across. But every case that I came across like this, it so happened that the administrator or the deputy collector, whoever was leading that particular team, went to the field only to realize that the person was not being given a bed because he or she was asymptomatic.
Oh, God.
And all of this was bloody drama. Imagine me deploying a chunk of... not me, by me I mean the chief minister, deploying a chunk of my district resources, or the collector deploying his resources onto something which is flawed, fudged. And that was a point where we actually had to have conversations with journalists and say, please verify. If there's no way to verify, send it directly to us, because this is causing panic unnecessarily. And in a situation like that, citizens panicking is the worst thing that can happen to an administration. But one thing I have to mention is, it was during this time that I also ran the most successful campaign that I ever ran in my life. This was the time when everybody's talking about the Kerala model, etc., etc. And Kerala, hands down, did a very good job at handling COVID, according to all of us. But it was then that we saw the numbers and how attractive the journey of Andhra Pradesh was, from being at 0 tests per day
capacity.
to topping the test per million charts and ramping up the health infrastructure. And we just started putting the story out. We were like, why not claim it? We held it back for the longest time, thinking this is not the time to claim PR. Right?
Correct.
But we also understood that when a right message goes out, that you guys are doing well with respect to handling the pandemic, it's also going to decrease the panic levels in the citizens.
Right.
So we started rolling out and giving exclusive stories to journalists who welcomed it, because we had facts on our side, we had numbers on our side. Nothing that we were claiming was propaganda. It was hard fact. And it so happened that after 6 to 7 exclusive articles published by media houses in India, the WHO released an entire article on their website on the Andhra Pradesh model and how the village volunteer system, etc., was being manned. Every single house was being manned, and every volunteer was being given a charge of 50 houses. And this was a system that was established pre-COVID, which came in very handy. So I would say handling communications for a politician, coming back to your question, is very, very tricky. Because accept it or no, there are religious sentiments involved. There are caste sentiments involved. There are stakeholder sentiments involved. Every word that you say, you're looking at 5,000 angles in which all of this could go wrong.
Correct.
And after a point, when you say, where does strategy come in? How is it to run PR? Like any other profession, you weigh your options. You look at which side the majority is on. Unless and until it is an absolute non-negotiable certain things you have to go ahead irrespective of whether or not the majority is with you.
Correct.
If it's the right move, if it's for the well-being of the people. But more often than not, even any sort of administrator, any sort of politician is always looking at the majority being on the side of the decision that he takes. And in that process, people might feel that
Decisions become colluded.
yeah, decisions become colluded. You don't really know in which situation a certain call was taken. Now, please understand this, man. I mean, there was this entire hula-hoo about, an X person or a Y person being against a certain community, etc. That man's already a chief minister. I mean, it would be foolish of anybody sitting in power to go against any community when he already has power in hand.
Yeah.
That will only wreck me, right?
Correct.
So, a lot of these things don't make sense. With the advent of social media, I guess a lot of false propaganda. Everybody's got a tool nowadays to put everything out
Yeah.
that they want to. It has colluded a lot of things. Having said that, I'm not here to say that, politics is 100% clean. I don't think any industry
It isn't. It of course isn't.
No industry is. In politics, you just get to know more about the murky stuff than otherwise because the limelight is always on them.
Correct.
Right? Having said that, the people that I work with, I'll have to give them credit to the extent of saying that they were pragmatic and they were logical. And each time somebody like me who's from the outside made a point, they gave me a ear and they looked at the logic behind it. And I think that's the best we can expect from any professional.
Got it. So, you had said that this part of your professional career is what changed you a lot as a person. Correct?
Yes.
What was it that changed you about it? Right?
This is going to be a very heavy one for your viewers, right? So, it was during COVID that I was working out of the Chief Minister's office in Tadepalli. And from friends of friends, acquaintances, family members, this was a time when everybody was struggling for beds. And this wasn't a crisis that hit one state or two states, it hit the country. Right from Mumbai to the national capital to Hyderabad, there was a shortage of beds everywhere because people were panicking, didn't really see whether or not they needed a bed, and everybody wanted a bed, right? So the situation was such. It was during this time that, because the society feels that the minute you say you're working with somebody in power, you're going to be powerful yourself, etc. I used to get approximately 15 to 20 calls every single day for beds. And these were not just people in Andhra Pradesh. These used to be people in Hyderabad.
Is this during the first wave or the second?
This is the second wave.
Second wave.
Second wave
was the worst.
Yeah, it was the worst. It was very bad. And when you get 20 calls seeking for beds for loved ones, and even if you are in a position of power, I don't think I was, but I just knew the right people to contact to make something happen. And just ensure that demand meets supply at some point. But despite being there and having all the access that I had, having all the so-called power that I had, I could max arrange beds for 10 people. And I was human. If I had to make a choice between A person or B person, I was human to say, and today also I think I'm human to say that I'm bound to pick somebody I know more.
Yeah.
And when I went back each night, and I realized, and obviously I used to get calls from those I could not arrange beds for, no matter, I tried arranging for everybody, saying, you know what, you couldn't arrange for a bed and this person passed away. There was this one question which didn't let me sleep for months together and psychologically disturbed me a lot, to the extent where I was just holed up in a room for quite some time. I said, who the hell am I to take that call of who lives and who dies? What gives me that power or that right to decide? And there was no answer. There was essentially no answer, and I think that put me off power for a long, long time. Yes, those hard calls need to be made. I could at least arrange for those 5 or 10.
But you don't have any other option.
You don't. Such was life. COVID was so hard on most of us because of the same reason. On one hand, I was seeing this. On one hand, I was going through a phase like this. And on the other hand, right from people in my close quarters, I was looking at people being so complacent about something called COVID. Nobody ever realized the seriousness of it until and unless it hit them or their family.
Yeah.
And it was sad to see. And that is where I felt communication came in. And that is when, luckily, because of the Chief Minister's plans and everything, they rolled out a lot of communication which educated people on what to do, what not to do, and how dangerous this is.
Right.
And I think everybody was dealing with this for the first time. So therefore, it was very tricky. People were learning on the go. A lot of doctors also that I spoke to did not really know what to do during the initial junctures. Today, when we look back, we can say that, okay, this could have been done better, that could have been done better. But I think we did the best that we could for the first time.
Right.
And it was that phase of having to take that call. I don't even think I took that call. It's just a de facto impact of what I could have done, could not have done. So I think that's going to be with me for a lifetime. I mean, I don't know if it's guilt. I don't know. It's just pain.
It's just, yeah, I mean, I can understand that, right? But was this the reason, or was this whole phase that you went through the reason why you then moved on from like the public services sector, from journalism, from the PR of a chief minister to a more corporate-ish life, I would say?
There were two reasons, to be very honest. I had built what I was hired for, right? And I felt that my team there was a well-oiled machinery. And I felt saturated myself. I mean, politics heats up every 5 years. I felt saturated professionally to the extent where I wanted to do something that was more challenging to me. I felt the team did not need me anymore to that extent because they were well trained. They got their work done. This was the most primary reason, the emotional turmoil that I was going through because of all of this. It had a major role to play. But my plan has always been to experience everything comms has to give you.
Got it.
By the time you're, say, 27, 28, and then fix up on where you want to be for the long run, right? I had done hardcore journalism. I had done investigations. I've covered a wide range of things when I was a journalist. I've now handled political PR and gotten a taste of it. Obviously dealt with a lot of big data in the process, understood how data science functions to not a great degree, but to a nascent degree. Now it was time for me to understand how I can employ all of these things that I have learned during the course of the past 4.5, 5 years into building a brand.
Got it.
And I always believe that building a brand is way easier than building the image of a politician.
Yeah.
Because of the number of sensitivities attached.
Okay, before we move to that, I have one question. I've heard, someone had told me that because they also worked in the PR of these politicians, that when a lot of these times when you hear these really absurd statements made by politicians, right? Like, for example, eating noodles is is a cause to rape, or whatever it is. A lot of the times, it's all planned PR. Is that true?
Well, I can give you one instance that I'm privy to. If you remember, there was this person who had come out and said, during the entire Padmavat controversy, there was this person who had come out and said, आप दीपिका पादुकोण का नाक काट के दो, मैं आपको 10 लाख रुपए दूंगा. He was a cadre holder in one party at that point in time. And he's a big leader in his community as well. He had a lot of following at that. And this answers your question point blank, I guess. So I met him. So usually what happens when a politician makes a stupid statement like this, he's asked to go into hiding, or that's the usual protocol, right? But this man is taking calls, is inviting all the journalists home, sitting in his hall and giving interviews. I took his interview, and after that I was like, yaar, kya kar rahe ho, yaar? Matlab, kyun kar rahe ho? See, you have so many followers, you have so many people who depend on you for a lot of things. What if one of them takes it seriously and goes and attacks them? Who will be responsible? He looked at me, he's like, yeah, Akash, you have quite some experience right now. Abhi bachcho ki tarah baat kar rahe ho. I said, why? He said, there's something major happening in the other political party today, a major development that's running on the media today. So I got a call from one of the big wigs in my party to, make a statement like this and run on the media instead. And it was shocking, but it was not unexpected. Because somebody who's battled out politics for so many years and has evolved into a leader in a particular community or a particular space, if that person's being so stupid, it makes you think about the why. That's why I always say, whenever it is that you're analyzing a speech, you're analyzing pointers being put out by anybody in a public service, be it a politician, a cop, a bureaucrat, it's not what is being said, it's why it's being said.
It's being said.
Don't limit yourselves to the what. That is when you falter. Go to the why. Right from the attire to the color of the clothes worn. Everything sends out a message. Communications and PR is no longer an art, it's a science. It is a data-driven science as on date. And a lot of thought goes into how a person's dressed, how a person's hair looks, how he has to start talking 3 seconds after entering the stage and not immediately. How that, and back in the day, I had the chance of actually speaking to the world champion of public speaking, and he taught me something very simple. He said, Akash, always do this when you with respect to hand gestures on the stage. When you do this part of your hand or your palm is more calming than the other part.
Got it.
Never start speaking within a second of entering the stage, because that shows a sense of nervousness. Always pick a topic which is either for or against a majority of your audience if you want to click with them. If you're for them, you better give them a logical parameter or another reason to believe that why they're for it, something that they haven't already thought of. Right? Surprise them with a reason that they might not have thought of already. If you're against them, you better have it in you to convince them. If not convince them, at least, bring them to a point of mutual respect where
they're like, okay, what is this guy said makes sense.
Exactly. So these are tools that are employed across the board. The one thing that has changed, according to me, is the fact that there are no formats anymore.
Got it.
If somebody tells me this is the format to write a press release, or this is the format to unless and until it's a legal document that has a prescribed format, I would say do away with all of them. And I mean, these are all archaic. You have an attention span of 8 seconds according to Microsoft in 2017, and for all you know, we would have gotten worse.
Correct.
So you have 8 seconds to capture somebody's attention.
Now it's 3.
3. Like, that's what I'm saying. It was 8 in 2017, now it's 3. So 3 seconds, as a communicator or a strategist, it gives you what, 4 words? 4 words to ensure that you read through?
Yeah.
That's a tough task to do.
Crazy. So after this is when you moved on to your corporate-ish life. I know you're still into, how is it different?
It's very different. Politics is very high octane. It's very high octane. It's always big stakes. Money-wise, I think it's pretty much on the same lines. Both the companies that I've engaged with, they're at the right juncture in their growth. Prospects-wise, it was the same. But it's very different considering how make or break one word can be. In business, I still think, unless and until it's a contractual document or a legal document, you still have a chance to pivot. To an extent. In business, you don't always have competitors at your throat doing a press conference every 1 hour.
Right.
Trying to belittle you. You don't have an entire well-oiled machinery of, say, 5,000, 6,000 people deployed only to destroy you. And it also is a little bit more difficult because politics and government is something that journalists anyway write about, right? It is about how important that news is. It also introduced me to a new sphere of journalists because for the first time I was also dealing with business journalists. These were always friends before, people I had never worked with, unless and until there were business stories coming out of the Andhra Pradesh government, etc. I would say it is very different from a deliverable perspective. It is way more data-driven than politics on the face of it is.
Got it.
Otherwise, politics is also very data-driven right now. But on the face of it, business PR seems more data-driven than otherwise. There are a lot of new tools which are coming in, which are being made use of. And I don't know, I just feel that business PR hasn't evolved as on date as much as political PR has.
Got it.
Primarily because I still feel a lot of people are sticking to a lot of formats, are sticking to a lot of ways of dissemination, which
are old, which are traditional.
Which are old, traditional, no longer work. And you need to understand one thing here, Rohit, that is, as a politician, as a chief minister, if you're giving a speech, you cannot filter it out. you cannot filter it out to a section of your
Audience.
state. As a business, it is all about that filtration.
Correct.
You would want to send one message across to your users who are maybe playing games on your platform. On the other hand, you'd want to send another message out to your stakeholders, to the VC circle,
The
the
business
investor
side,
circle.
yeah.
So the right message with the wrong audience can be disastrous.
In a business perspective.
Yes. At the same way, you also need to identify which media houses to tap into. There are a lot of media houses right now which are behind a paywall, which are only read by a top level of executives.
Correct.
That becomes very important when I want to send a message across to the investors
Got it.
circle, right?
Got it.
So these, I think, are the primary differences. But the most challenging, according to me, will always be politics, and it'll be something. And if you, according to me, in my opinion, if you've done political PR, and if you've done well, and if you've learned what it has to teach you, and if you just have the knack of learning something and employing that in another industry, and utilizing that learning to yield results in a different context, that's all you need to be a communication specialist. Because today you're dealing with policy communication, tomorrow you're dealing with stratcoms, the day after that you're dealing with hardcore PR material.
Right.
The nature might be different. It's about learning how to learn. I mean, it's as far as you do that, it's fine.
Got it. So I think this is a good time to close down this conversation. Akash, you've shared some really, really amazing and in-depth knowledge as to how the industry works and the experiences that you've had and which I'm pretty sure people don't know about, right? People don't know about the reality and the back end of such things. So thank you so much for doing this for us. This is the first episode, guys, that we are doing. We'll continue doing this. Please, support us. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to like. And is there anywhere they can connect with you?
Yes, they can follow me on LinkedIn. I go by the name Akash Kolaru, and the same on Instagram. I've recently come onto Instagram. I could never be out there on social media for the longest
Because of
time.
your journalism career, right?
Because of being because of executing investigations, it was the easiest way to get to know who you are, right? So I finally made myself an Instagram account so they can follow me there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any
Thank you.
closing remarks for the audience?
Closing remarks, I'd just like to say one thing. The point of all of this and me doing this session, firstly, thank you for having me. I think it was a great platform to put out a lot of things that I haven't ever. My motive, something that I began with when we started, was to let people know from Hyderabad, from Bangalore, from Chennai, from Jabalpur, any part of this country, that if you have the skill set. I started from scratch. My parents had no clue about what the media industry could offer. Had no clue about what the future prospects of a mass comm or a BA pass were. Like, I might fancily today say I'm a triple major in English literature, mass comm, and political science. By the end of the day, it's a BA pass degree. They don't realize, and somehow a false sense of insecurity has been put into people that they need a godfather to enter the national media. I just want to say the whole motive of this podcast is to let you know and let everybody know that it just takes to be good to be out there and to be recognized. There are always people out there who will recognize the spark in you and give you an opportunity when needed. I've had a lot, God willing, I've had a lot of people during my journey. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been here. So it's all about just going out there.
Essentially, shoot your shot and you will have your shot.
100%. You should be a comm strategist, man. So that's
Awesome.
about it. And
Awesome.
thanks. I hope everybody likes listening to what you've said.
I'm sure they will. Awesome. Thank you.